Welcome to the Dr. G Show. What?
Welcome! I was doing funny things with my teeth.
Oh.
I just drank a piece of my smoothie, except it was a stringy piece.
What?
TMI.
All right.
For our intro.
So today we are talking about...
Shall we introduce ourselves?
We should introduce ourselves. My name is Holly Hajajina.
Uh-huh.
And
my name is...
I'm the director of the Y.
Dr. Gino.
Corporate director of corporate wellness at the YMCA. And you're who?
I'm glad that you pay attention to other people outside of yourself.
What? It sounds like propaganda.
So I do corporate wellness and healthy lifestyle coaching, and I teach yoga. And meditate a lot to keep my emotions as stable as I can, which is what we're going to talk about today. And what do you do, Dr. G?
I just stay centered and help people. So I help people create a normal lifestyle that's consistent with life longevity without gimmicks and nonsense.
That's right.
So that they can be just happy and healthy.
He creates centenarians.
Maybe. Most people be lucky to live to 60 these days.
We're hoping to... Hi, Jeannie. Mm-hmm. We're hoping to create some extra blue zones in the world. What do you think?
Yeah.
I think we should. Does anybody know what the blue zones are? We've talked about them before.
So, this is episode 134,
Hi, Linda.
I think. And we're talking about the physiology of emotions.
Yes.
And last week we talked about happiness.
We talked about anxiety.
We talked about anxiety.
Hi, Roy.
And this week we're talking about anger, or as we like to call it, hollowing.
What?
No? All right.
I knew he was going to point the finger my way.
That's right.
Welcome, Tim.
Oh, it's called my family, my mom.
So we're going to talk. This is a safe space
that's
to
right.
discuss emotion.
Everything you say is just here.
It's
like we'll keep it all a secret.
Yeah, you don't have to. You can share whatever you like, but it is a safe space in terms of anything that we talk about today, and in terms of any of these emotions. Those are all natural human experiences, right?
That's right.
That happen for everybody, and so the idea with this talk today is not to be judging what we're struggling with or what we do.
Yeah.
And so today we talked about anxiety, which I think was probably a good starter because it kind of can lead into
anger.
This talk about anger. It's not the only source of anger, but is there anybody out there? I know I struggle with frustrations and things like that, and it comes up and you feel like you don't have any control over it. What do I do? And it becomes that fight, flight, or freeze action where you're either acting it out, you're either holding it in, repressing it, or you're freezing because you don't know what to do.
Right. And I think a lot of people just kind of get used to it, and it just becomes a part of who they are, that kind of hardwired amygdala kind of behavior, to where you don't even know you have a choice not to be angry or to react in anger.
Right. Have you ever heard anyone say, I'm just this way?
Right.
This is just who I am.
That's how
I'm too old to change.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you talk to my mom? So yeah, that's exactly it. Because it's just that, well, somebody has to do, and somebody, and it's always like that cadence of like, I don't have a choice. This is just who I am. Right.
Right.
Which is weird because my grandma, she's so quiet, or when she was alive, she was just quiet and peaceful. Grandpa seemed quiet and peaceful. But
and I can see why people do say that, because, just playing devil's advocate for a second, because it does feel like it's out of your control sometimes when it does come up. The problem is that it can be so destructive.
Yeah.
That's a good, and incendiary.
Disruptive and destructive.
Not only outwardly, when we're talking about
but
expressing
inwardly.
Outwardly, but inwardly as well. So how are we not? We're not only talking about what happens physically, shooting up schools, or all the videos you see, or like the video you posted on your Facebook about this. We're not talking about just the physical expressions of it, but what is your mind doing? Yeah. What are your perceptions doing when they're number one pointed outward, but also what are you doing to yourself? How are you expressing anger or turning anger inward towards yourself? So those are some of the things that we're going to discuss.
And the real I don't know. You know, a lot of people don't realize how easy it is really to change that wiring of your brain. Like, it is really, really easy. And we'll talk about that at the end. But it's just practice and practice to rewire.
Which means going against the grain of your natural inclination. Oh, yeah. So, because the brain, there's almost a pleasure sensation, too. The amygdala gets fired. It's firing, and that train is on a roll, right? And that it just seems like you just want to expand that train and out to the whole vicinity.
And people love karma. They love this idea that bad people should pay. If somebody hurts me, they should suffer the consequences. But we don't want to suffer our own consequences for any time that we've been the problem. Yeah,
so it can turn into blame as well. And we blame like we talked about before. We don't want to change. We want to blame everything else, everything external, rather than taking a look at what are our perceptions of this situation, or what's coming up for us.
Yeah.
So
I feel like you blame me for a lot of stuff.
But he deserves it. Like, that's the exception to the rule.
Hey, there's Marcia.
The exception.
Maybe I'm a little blamed.
So, should we talk about some of the ways that, just before we get into the what to do's, should we talk about some of the ways that it affects the body?
Well, I'd like to ask a question first.
Okay.
Is anger valid? Hey, there's Debbie Cruz.
Are we even... Hey, Debbie!
Is anger valid?
I'm not sure we're...
Damn it, I said is anger valid!
I'm scared.
If you're not safe, blink twice to the camera.
I'm glad that I told that company I talked to that our show is a little bit loosey-goosey. Hi, Penny. So well, I think we'll get into it.
Well, okay, so...
You just want to hear their answers first? Okay.
Why are you all up in my cheese
Dr. G has a question.
I'm just messing around because you're the one that always asks questions.
Oh, okay. So why don't we...
So wait, is anger valid?
Sometimes it feels good. Thank you for responding.
Yeah.
Let's capture some of these responses.
Stephanie might be a parent or have been in a relationship.
Sometimes it feels like release, right? Ooh. Sometimes it feels like, this is so pent up. I'm releasing.
Yeah.
And like we talked about, that brain experience of those chemicals and the firing of the amygdala, that gets going.
Yeah.
And we start firing, and it's hard to...
Right. And that amygdala, basically, as we talk about this stuff, there's two parts of your brain that we want to concentrate on. One is that frontal lobe that's up here in the front, and that's kind of the reasoning part. That's the world actually is pretty good. Most people are pretty good. Things work out, kind of part of your brain. And then you have the amygdala, which is somewhere right here. That is that kind of reptilian brain, that kind of fight or flight. That's the racism brain, the bigotry, the xenophobia. That's the fear of what's unknown, that it might be danger, So that's the part of your brain that in the good parts keeps you from getting in the van to get the candy. But the frontal lobe is, that's not really, stranger danger isn't really real. So
yeah. So we've got some people. Stacy said there is such a thing as righteous anger. We discern what to do with or about our anger. One other person said valid, as it's kind of
righteous
up
anger.
Yeah.
Righteous anger.
I think somebody has a connotation he's feeling to the word righteous.
So what's righteous anger?
So
is that like? So like kind of like intolerance of intolerance?
So no, I think of righteous anger. Hello. I think of righteous anger, and this is what we're going to talk about today. I kind of wanted to get into the icky stuff first, and then the.
Well, don't let me misguide this karmas,
This
Daisy.
has become the Holly and Josh show.
All right.
All
right.
So yes, in my opinion, the answer is yes, in the sense that anger is a sign.
Mm-hmm.
It's information, right? If we take the judgment out of it, it tells us something about ourselves, right? It tells us something about what we're experiencing. It tells us something about how we're perceiving that situation. It gives us information. So in that sense, we might have a right to feel angry based on our own perceptions, right? Righteous.
I
right?
feel like anger is the inability to control the situation and control others.
That's one thing.
But is that righteous?
Feeling like your environment is out of control and that you don't have very much control over it, that can be very frustrating. But that's also a perception, right? Because if we knew that we did have options, or we knew that there was another way to perceive it, we might feel like we are more in control.
That's right. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So there are situations that occur where it's natural to experience anger, right? You see people shooting up schools and shooting up mosques. That's natural. That would be a natural response, right? But
to do that, or to be
our
angry
question
about it?
is to be angry about it.
Yeah.
But then our question is, and something that we're going to talk about today is that the root emotion? Like, is that the root emotion? Is anger the root? So some studies say that anger is learned, that we're not born angry, but we might have a root emotion occurring first, or maybe occurring so fast that then we just jump right in and skip to the anger.
If we're not born angry, why do we scream when we leave the vagina?
Is that anger, or is that just distress?
I think they spank their butt and make them cry.
What do you guys think the root emotions of anger might be?
All right, so Sarah says, I think anger is okay to feel, but it's what we do. Well, it went down there. But it's what we do with it. And that's exactly it, right? It's okay to be. So that's the one thing, is anger is valid. It's okay to feel angry. So we may not be born with anger. We may be a learned perception or a learned kind of output from our family or friends.
Yes,
or whatever.
a lot of it is conditioning.
Conditioning.
Right.
And so it's probably not nature, but it's nurture.
Ooh.
But then what do we do with that anger? So do we use that anger to hurt others? Or do we use that anger to protect others?
I like that answer, Jeannie. She says fear.
Mm.
Fear as a root cause of anger. I would almost say that could be like the number one
Fear?
root cause of anger. Although we've got other things. Could be sadness.
It's always fear and sadness.
Feeling disrespected. There's some other things. Pressure.
Pressure. Yeah, I think pressure brings out a lot of anger in people. Because they feel like they're basically pushing themselves to the limit all the time. They keep everything packed down. And then eventually they just get angry because they can't control it. They can't keep it packed down. Everybody wants something from them. And then they just explode. And then they meet Dr. Garrett. And then they have a talk show together.
I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, Emily agrees with fear. And Gina likes to use anger to eat chocolate aggressively. I think that is a perfectly acceptable way to deal with anger.
Angry chocolate eating.
Not knowing how to express themselves. Yes. Anger is fear, loss, sadness, projection. Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, and Sabrina's good there too. Like anger, it results in inability to express yourself. So that's kind of like when you're not being heard and you keep saying the same thing, and eventually you just explode, right? So that's
I think one key to that too, when you're not feeling heard, or you think that there is some external force that's working against you, is how are you hearing yourself? Like, are you hearing yourself? Are you validating yourself? Are you listening to what's really happening inside you as well? because that is something that you do have control over, and it may not feel like it sometimes, but we do. And so if we don't have control over how other people are acting or reacting to us, but we can take a look at what's going on inside of us, and our perceptions of those people might be triggering something in you, right? That says, I'm not good enough. I never get whatever it is, my way, or that all bad things happen all the time to me, or it might be triggering that up for you. So might be good to then kind of just assess.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
So I gotta say, like, probably the only time I ever really felt angry, because like even like getting in fights when I was young, I would kind of laugh during fights. Like, I didn't really bother me too much, I don't think. Like, I just think I was really easygoing, you know, nothing bothered me too much. But when I had kids, and them not doing what you're supposed to do, and you're trying to work, and your ex is working, and everybody's trying to do their stuff, and you're just like, you feel limited, and you feel like everything is just more impactful than it really is, and then you're just like, just do what I told you to do, and then, you know, like, there's someone always hurt, there's someone always crying, and there's just something that breaks all the time. And I just remember that sense of just feeling so overwhelmed sometimes that I know I responded in anger, but that really wasn't them. That wasn't the situation. That was really about me. And so, like, even now with 4 daughters, like, it is very rare that I ever get upset anymore. And even I know my daughter, my middle one, who's 13, like, they're all pretty good kids, but she was in the living room and she was yelling, Dad! Dad! Like, she can't get up and walk in. And I'm in my room with the computer helping one of the twins. And so, again, I'm just like, breathe. She'll eventually get up and come in here. I'm not going to scream back at her to stop screaming. Stop screaming! Right? Like, do the thing that I told them not to do so that they'll, you know. So, like, it's just hypocrisy, you know. And so I just kept letting her do this, and I remember just kind of starting to boil a little bit, and I was just like, no. It's not about the situation. Be calm. Wait until things are done. And then and she never came in. She just kept yelling and stuff. Finally, she stopped. But I finally went over, and I went in the living room, and I said, if you want something, you need to get up and come over, and you need to ask. And she's like, but you don't understand. No. This is what needs to happen. You can't just scream across the place and expect me to come, and I'm not going to scream back. And so it's funny because, like, out of 3 years now, that was the only moment where I would have had that kind of anger, but I was able to, again, it's not the situation, it's my interpretation of what's going on, it's how I'm dealing with it. And so, again, why would I let the situation control me? And so it's really interesting to see that real life change in a scenario to where...
So you were able to kind of... Yeah, so you were able to kind of step out of yourself and kind of become an observer of that situation and realize, oh, hey, this is what this is really about. Right.
But before I knew all those kind of changes to rewire, like practicing the pause and meditation and breath and all that stuff, and really how ridiculous it is, our responses sometimes as parents, but I remember, I still remember, I mean, being in those situations when everything just seemed like out of control. Like, I remember that, but it could have just as easily been in control because it was me. It was really me, not the situation.
So that's the good thing about anger, is that the more aware that we become and the more mindful that we become, it can lead towards us developing kind of more assertive or gentle or alternative ways to express and communicate either our needs or to consult about a situation without it turning into a what do I want to say?
Shit fit. Shit show. I'm the ringmaster of the shit show.
I was gonna say cluster F, but then I didn't want to drop the F bomb. Man. So anger is good in that sense. It's teaching you something. It's a sign. Oh, hey, this is happening for me, and it can be a catalyst for growth.
Yeah. And sometimes that again, that processing is like, hey, I felt angry today, but I didn't scream at anyone. I felt angry and I didn't, honk my horn 20 times. I didn't flip anybody off. I didn't murder everybody in the family, So those little steps really are important for that rewiring of, like, even celebrate the minor changes as you improve.
So let's talk about we've already kind of talked about the fact that anger is okay. Like, it's not something to judge harshly, to repress horribly, which could turn into anxiety and depression. For me, anger is an effect, a secondary effect of chronically feeling anxiety and the feeling that everything might fall apart. Everything might be a catastrophe if this, something bad is going to happen if blah, blah, X, Y, and Z. So repression, when we press that in and we don't deal with it, it stays in the body. It starts to manifest as other things like anxieties, depression, or bodily ailments, things like that.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
If we're over-expressing or prolonging or dwelling or ruminating on it, then we are increasing our capacity to be angry through the connection, the plasticity of the neurons in the brain.
Yeah.
So, so neurons that fire together wire together.
Nice.
And and you actually coined this term, which I use all the time in a lot of my talks. Meditating. So when we keep we talked about this before in the last talk as well, and emotion in and of itself lasts anywhere from 45 seconds to a minute, but we just tend to replay it in the mind, and maybe there might be triggers that continue that keep cultivating that rumination, and so Dr. G calls that meditating, because you're actually meditating on being angry, and you're strengthening that ability to continue being angry each time we really indulge in it, and we really kind of let it go. So do you want to talk about some of the physiological effects?
I would love to talk about that.
You would love to talk
about that. Okay. Well, and so the physiology of the hormones, we talked about that balance of, like, when somebody's depressed, that their dopamine, serotonin is kind of worn out. When they're in love, there's serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin are high. But with kind of anger, it's epinephrine, norepinephrine, fight or flight all the time. That ends up there. And so that's just kind of like a warning light of, like, anxiety and depression, kind of the same things with that. And so the physiology with that, so a couple things happen. So there's that underlying perception of anger, so you may not notice it's anger, but you still have a physiological reaction with that anger. And so it goes from internal to external, and we already said it's a secondary reaction anyway to sadness or fear. But those internal thoughts that are either overt or subconscious or conscious, they end up causing bodily changes. So you change with your neurotransmitters, you have changes with your hormones, and your adrenal glands that look like little triangles or caps that sit on top of your kidneys, those make epinephrine, norepinephrine, and cortisol. So you take cholesterol, which again does not cause heart disease. Cholesterol goes to there, and then it makes, that cholesterol doesn't make epinephrine, norepinephrine. It makes cortisol. Mm-hmm. And then dopamine is converted either into, or tyrosine is converted into dopamine for kind of feeling cool. It's all good. Or the dopamine is converted to epinephrine, norepinephrine. So that dopamine that makes you feel dope or good, it's the one that then gets converted or exploited to anxiety and anger for that epinephrine, norepinephrine. Same thing that we see when we look at things like cholesterol makes progesterone, and progesterone is your happy hormone, but it converts through the adrenals into cortisol, which is stress. And so we can have happiness or we can have stress, but we can't have both. We pick one. The same thing's true with dopamine and epinephrine. We're going to pick one of those. We're either going to feel great or we're going to feel anxious and angry, but we can't feel both at the same time.
Yeah, I doing some of the research for this talk, I
Research?
I did.
Barnes and Noble's doing some reading? Fancy book learning?
Elevated cortisol causes neurons to accept too much calcium through their membrane, and a calcium overload can make cells fire too frequently and die.
Boom. Yep. It kills your
It
brain
causes
cells.
loss of neurons in the prefrontal cortex. It causes, kills neurons in the hippocampus.
Yeah. Holly Maracas, you need to really listen to this. Anger makes people dumber. What?
Why does Holly necessarily need
She
to
got
listen to
angry
that?
talking trash to me on Facebook Messenger. Because we were talking about politics.
So the other thing, and tell me if this is true, we've talked about not having a base depletion of serotonin, but it says too much cortisol will decrease serotonin.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, some people are like, oh, when they get brain fog or forgetfulness, right? But, you know, as memory goes to short-term memory, then to medium-chain memory, to long-term memory, cortisol actually interrupts that processing. People who are stressed become more forgetful, and then they can't...
I knew he was going to go there.
No, you didn't know that.
It is, you know what? This is sad because I'm like...
Because you're forgetful?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I have to write everything down. It's gotten worse as I've gotten older.
What if when people were angry and stressed, they forgot why they were angry and stressed?
Oh, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Okay. This is, my mother was a type A personality, and she's still alive, but I say was because type A. So this sort of being angry and having high blood pressure runs in my family. Anyway, so she had a stroke a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And it did affect her memory, but also the part of the brain that it kind of affects like apathy and how much you care about things.
Right.
And now she just doesn't care.
Nice.
Like it's like, whatever. Whereas
she's not anger at that?
before, you know, and she still has moments, but in general, she's not near as, I don't want to use the word high strung because I don't mean it that way, but just not near as tightly wound.
Right.
So maybe it is a blessing to lose your memory. So so anger affects. Go ahead.
So covert anger, that underlying physiological stuff, changes the processing of cognition and even lexiconical reactions.
Shut
up. No, it sounded good.
So ask the audience if they know what that word
is.
We had a
it's not like we're trying to
over
synthesize an alkaloid or something.
We had a debate over whether or not either of us knew this word, and so he decided to use it.
But it changes. So whether conscious or unconscious, it changes your cognition. And what it does is it diverts blood up to this area of your brain, and the homunculus of division of the brain, what it affects, you basically, if you separate right here of your brain, the front part is motor, the back part is sensory, just on either side of that. So it floods that area with blood for basically just dealing with emotions really quick. There's Newman. And also, should we run away or fight with this reaction for anger? So anger takes that blood away from that frontal lobe so we can't even think straight. And that's like, I don't know if you've ever tried to argue anything reasonable with people or that they're angry about. But angry people do not base their stuff off of actual information, facts, evidence, anything. They are just like one step away from calling you a name and attacking you as a person, right? And so, you know, someone says, well, I don't think that's true. Well, okay, well, studies show this. Well, you're an idiot. Like, okay, all right, but so why am I an idiot? well, because you're so because their brain is not even working here. It's not even like the idea that you are going to reason with somebody that's angry is lunacy in the first place,
and
right?
that's where black and white thinking comes in.
Well, that's racist.
Where you call it racist, I call it extreme.
Racist thinking, black and white thinking.
So, thank you, Newman. Newman, you're so sweet.
Newman's watching this while he's driving.
Maybe he's a passenger.
Nice. All right, yeah.
Okay, so on that brain thing, now I'm going to talk about the horse and the rider. I told you I'd bring this up, but I didn't tell you why.
Horse and the rider.
The horse and the rider.
I feel like you've talked about this before.
I have in another talk, but I don't think I talked about it last week. If I did, tell me. So he's talking about how the blood gets diverted to this certain amygdala part of the brain, right? That's firing, and it's those neurons are firing there, and they're just going crazy, and it's real flared up. I want you to think of that area of the brain as a wild horse without a rider. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
So there's three basic, this is a little bit generalized, but three basic areas of the brain, right? We've got our reptilian brain, which we might think of as like this. Oh, here's our brain stem.
Our brains are in our fists? I'm going to bring some knowledge to this game.
So this part, and then we've got our mammalian brain, which might be this part here, right? So this is reptilian, brain stem.
This is, see, like this, reptilian.
Yes. So then we have our mammalian part of the brain. That's where that amygdala is. That's where those emotions process. That's what animals have, what humans have, right?
Is that mammalian?
So reptiles,
or female
mammalian. I did not say mammalian. Mammalian. And then on top of that, we have the cortex, or the prefrontal cortex.
That's just this part.
Which is the part Dr. G was talking about up here, right? So if you think about that mammalian brain, that's our wild horse. That I wish I had a picture. Because when it gets triggered, when that horse gets triggered and has that that fight or flee experience, it runs off the rails, right? So we go crazy, we lose control. Okay?
I'm liking this.
The prefrontal cortex, that's our planning part of the brain. That's our thinking, our reflective. We're not reactive. We're just kind of planning things out, and we're more logical, more rational.
That's the Patrick area of our brain.
So, when we do mind-body practices and meditation, we coordinate that cortex with the mammalian brain, right? And we give the mammalian brain a rider. We give our horse a rider, right?
Nice. All right. I see what you're doing with this.
Yes. So our rider is better able to then steer our horse, calm it down, maybe stop it in its tracks, and not go off the rails, going crazy.
Guiding, yeah.
Right?
I like that.
It's called top-down processing. So when we engage that prefrontal cortex area of the brain, we're connecting those neurons into the other area of the brain, and we have more control. We're not as reactive. We build our brain matter. We are less fearful. We ruminate less.
Yeah, evolved.
Emotionally vibrant.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and I like that too, because again, the idea of that kind of rider is like your instinct may be hardwired for the horse rather than the rider, and then it's just like, let's freak the hell out, let's get in a fight, let's start some shit, right? But then the rider's just like, oh boy, all right, let's not fight yet, let's reason this out.
Yeah.
And that's that difference of like, so someone who is in anger is a horse without a rider, and that's trying to tame that pony and trying to get on, and it's all bucking and getting crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And put on top of that, what we talked about.
On top of the rider's the hat.
Well,
and the hat.
Add to that To add to that is what we talked about last time. Our brains are predisposed towards negative thoughts.
Whoa. You said we are not born with anger.
I
but
said
anger
anger
is taught. The reaction to anger is taught.
I'm talking about thoughts now, not emotions.
Damn it. Thought I had you there.
So, if we add on to...
Is... All right, go ahead.
If we add to this concoction of anger, and we kind of look at it a little bit as we're walking around with our negative thoughts about life, because that's how we survive. We use that as a survival mechanism, right? We're always looking out for danger. That is an additive to our anger, right? As well.
Yeah.
So that meditation and that mindfulness and that learning how to manage anger with tips and tricks that we'll talk about here in a little bit can help us not be as susceptible.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. And if you guys have been through this kind of process before, right? So, like, to me, I think it was profound, this idea of, like, rewiring your brain and changing who you are and becoming this different person. Like, it's amazing. I didn't even know that stuff was possible, right? But have you guys been through that kind of process, too? And I know you guys, a lot of you guys watch offline, too. But if you feel comfortable kind of sharing that story, that'd be great of, like, who, you know, how differently do you think now than you did before? You know, and a lot of times we're waiting for this situation to change or people to change or whatever. But for those who have been through the process and come out the other side, this stronger, more resilient person that's not reactive. Let's just say non-reactive person, not stoic or incompatible with emotions, but they're not triggered all the time. They're not reaction. That they are now rider on top of that horse all the time. And comfortable with the idea that it's okay to feel uncomfortable. It's okay to feel like maybe you are getting angry, right? We said anger is a valid emotion, but it's not really a valid response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to happen, right? It's going to happen.
Unless it's righteous anger. Then it's okay to respond. So, like, those people that, like, you know, like child molesters, they end up going to jail and then they murder them. That's probably righteous anger. Yeah?
Yeah, that was invited.
The frontal lobe person in that conversation probably gets his ass kicked, too, because, well, guys, you know. And it's like, no, you're done, too.
So Newman asks, how do you deal with anger when trying to meditate? By letting go, ? So that's a great question.
Yeah.
So when these things come up, when anything comes up in meditation, if we try to fight against it and push it away, we run into resistance.
Right.
If we stuff it and or we start really fueling it, letting our mind kind of get marinated in it and kind of just building, then we fuel it as well. So the idea when meditating is to just notice. It's to develop or to come into sync with your observer that is neutral. So we're not judging it.
Yeah.
We're not saying this is good or this is bad. We're just saying this is as it comes up, and we allow for that without becoming it. Knowing that you are not your anger, I think, is key. So without identifying with it, without becoming your anger, you are not your anger, you're just observing it. When you can just observe it like that, it will come and go more easily, and you're more like riding the wave of that anger versus actually becoming it and believing it. Does that kind of make sense?
I think it does.
Okay. Stacy, appreciate the technical info. Yes. Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So,
Stacy goes to meditation. Did you know that?
Oh, cool. Yeah. So this is with any what? I'm always focused on the.
You're all about business.
Business.
So no, I really like the fact. So one thing I'd like to kind of stall on just a little bit is is I love that idea that you're talking about of that. Acknowledge that you're feeling angry. Be okay that it's okay to feel angry, but don't give it any power or authority, right? And don't judge yourself like, oh, God dang it, I'm getting angry again. It's like, I'm getting angry, kind of like Scott says this all the time. Isn't that interesting? Why do I feel angry? Because again, the anger is not about anyone else. Well, I'm feeling disrespected, or I'm feeling minimalized, or I'm feeling like I'm not heard, or I'm just overly sad, or can't control this environment, right? Going through that process. So once you kind of like acknowledge that and don't judge it, and then start to wire that towards the frontal lobe of kind of reasoning that, then suddenly you rewire to the frontal lobe.
Yeah. But you have to let it pass though, because it's going to come up and feel strong.
Yeah.
And that emotion will come up. It might come up with thoughts as well. It might come up with body sensations as well. And you're just by sitting with it, you're learning about it. Oh,
Yeah.
you might sit with it. And at first it seems like it's something that's going on externally. Your boss said something or whatever. And you might sit with that and pause and sit with that and notice, oh my gosh, my stomach really hurts. Oh my gosh, my body's not feeling good. Oh my gosh, I'm sick. Oh, that's where this is coming from. It doesn't have anything to do with your
Right.
boss.
Yeah.
Or it might be something else, whether it's your perception of yourself or your perception of life. You might notice, oh man, I'm really saying this about myself in this situation. Is that really true? When you pause, you give yourself a chance to question it, right? So
when you pause, you allow the rider to straddle the horse.
Yes. That's where we're stepping on.
Do you have that?
Huh?
You already know that?
I don't know.
I feel like
I'm just supporting that.
Paint pending.
So we learn better how to respond rather than react. And so reaction is immediate, but response is something that we're learning about, and we're developing that as a skill. So when this comes up, we're learning how to respond, to not only honor yourself and to honor your experiences, but then also how to learn to navigate those experiences as well in a respectful way that not only respects you, but respects the other as well.
Right. Stacy brings up the point of grace, right? And in meditation, where our group is the Sunshine Mafia, I don't want to brag, but we're a gang. So, the Blue Wafflers. Yeah?
Okay.
All right. You're not part of that gang, are you?
I'm not. That's okay.
Don't be jealous.
I'm okay
Don't be
with being
hating.
a loner.
Don't be jealous.
I don't got to be part of your group.
It's blood in, blood out. Actually, it's in our group in meditation, it's tears in, tears out.
Oh my gosh.
So, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So one of the things that JV came up with, I think it was her, but is just everybody wants grace for us, karma for everyone else. And I love that. Grace for me, karma for you. You deserve to suffer because of your things I disagree with. But for me, please forgive me. Give me grace.
Yeah.
Right? But the idea is really the more you can, like, you don't have to feel sorry for the other person. You don't have to say, well, maybe they had a crappy day. Well, who cares what happened to them?
You can just
Why is that bothering you?
You can just stop pouring energy out into that other person,
Right.
Into the idea of this other person, and learn to kind of take care of yourself.
Right. So if you give grace as much as you expect grace, you will find a lot of peace in that. Because it's not, I grew up so much of just like, if you deserve to suffer because you screwed all this stuff up and you did all this horrible stuff to me, you deserve to suffer. But the reality is, no, they don't. And who gives a shit, right? Whether they prosper or whether they fall apart, it should have nothing to do with how happy or sad I am in life. So that peace is that grace of, it doesn't matter what happens to you, I still get to be a whole happy person, right? So again, it's just, you don't deserve to be punished. I don't deserve to be punished. just, so I guess one of the ways I do it all the time is like, I've done that before too. So people are like, oh my God, can you believe that person? I've done that. You've done that. We've all done that. It's not that big of a deal.
And the more that you start to turn grace or turn genuine empathy toward yourself and kind of look at the roots of your own anger, the more you will see those delusions in others, and the more compassion you'll have for them, because you'll know that they are just also caught up in their own stories.
Yeah.
So.
And that's a good question is, okay, so a lot of people have anger towards other people, but lots of people have anger just towards themselves because they can't forgive themselves. That book, Brene Brown, about, she talks a lot about shame in that book and how we basically we're our own worst enemy. That's a really good book. It's not you, it's me, but it's really not me, or something like that. Yeah,
she's great in general. She's a sociologist and a shame researcher in general. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So very important to that sort of non-harming. That is, we're practicing that not only for ourselves but others too. But coming back to that neutral space where you're not that blame is just a distraction from you doing your own growth and development and healing.
Yeah.
So it's just a distraction from that. And now I'm talking about blame towards others, but also blame towards self.
Right.
Also, just a distraction from you learning and growing into your utmost potential there.
And I think a lot of that was shame too. We ought to do a thing on shame. But a lot of that shame too is the idea, like, I love the idea that people get all angry or frustrated or destroyed or anxious, because they feel like nobody knows how I feel. Nobody's been hurt like I hurt. Nobody has done what I've done. And the reality is, I think everybody has. That kind of sense of like, oh my God, I did this horribly embarrassing thing. Yeah, everybody does, right? Well, oh my God, like I watched my dad beat my mom, right? So I never told anybody about that because I was very ashamed of that. Like, poor white trash, mama, dad's beating mama kind of thing. Like, I don't want anybody to know that. But that actually empowers people to do those kind of things and to suffer. It ain't my fault he did that. I'm not there to protect him. And so that's that thing of like, you can say that, people abused you or people hurt you, and it's okay. Like, that is not yours to own. Like, I can't tell you how many patients I have that they are utterly destroyed and impaired and really frozen in time because of some trauma someone else caused them that they don't have to own.
Yeah. And we hang on to those things. And I think that is that desire to have some control. Like, I can't control others, but I could have controlled myself somehow, right? Like, so therefore it's my fault, or I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to be over-responsible for the situation, right?
Yeah. Or the kids are like, it's my fault they get in fights. It's not my fault they argue. It's my fault they got divorced.
Right. So that's where we're kind of turning that inward. So what I think today, kind of what we're talking about is, and I would ask you, is how do you interrupt that train of thought?
Interrupt.
And when it comes up,
interrupting the process.
He's interrupting.
Right.
So when that horse starts to take off,
boom.
Are you aware enough to notice it and shoot? Even if you just start with just noticing it, you're on the path to healing, right? If that's all you do in that moment is notice that you're angry and you don't do anything else, that's one step.
Yeah.
Then a big part of this as well is just to accept what's happening in your body. So you pause and accept what's happening within you, what's happening around you, and take that time or that moment. Or maybe you come back later because you're at work, right? And you go home and you say, okay, I'm going to reflect on this a little bit. You take that moment or another moment to seek to kind of understand what was going on for you through meditation or journaling, or maybe you take a walk and you get yourself out of that hyper arousal state. And then after that, maybe you can think about what kind of action plan might work for you next time it happens? What might you do differently in that moment, right?
Yeah.
What?
Clarice, do you still hear the lambs?
So,
That's wrong.
silence the lambs.
God damn.
Then there's lots of other things. Yes, pause, breathe, reflect.
Yes.
Release, let it come, let it go. When we cling to it, that's where we get stuck. When we're resistant to it, that's when we get stuck. And then there's all these other things that you can do to help, like manage it, right?
Like what?
You can meditate.
Oh, I like that.
You can go to mind-body practices.
You're just saying what Brazil said.
What other people are saying.
Meditate?
You can meditate, yoga, exercise.
It's not like we're Europeans. Exercise. And vigorous exercise. Fight or flight is anger. Fight or flight. So you have to run it off sometimes. So if you can't just like, okay, I'm just going to pull it together. I'm going to be okay. But if you're you're shaking, run that shit off. Work it out. You have to fight or flight, right? So find some small punk kid that's mouthing off and then beat them up so you know you can win the fight, right?
Yes, just breathe. It sounds so simple. You have to practice it. And you're practicing it in the moment when it feels like it's the last thing you want to do.
Right.
But even if you can't get to the breathing state, like I said, just continuing to remember to be aware, to be mindful of what's happening inside of you, is one way that you can immediately step outside of it for a moment and notice it from a more neutral place.
Yeah.
Like, oh, hey, I notice I'm angry. What's going on with this? That's interesting. You know, what's happening with that for me? And then you can start to kind of study and analyze some of the things that are coming up for you with that.
Yeah.
Before I know we're kind of getting close to time, but I wanted to...
We're done.
I wanted to kind of go through. I think this is interesting. What?
No,
I think
trying
these
to build suspense.
I think that these risk factors are really interesting, and they kind of help.
Ooh,
Actually, I'm
anger.
saying it also so it drives it home for myself as well.
Because you're angry all the time?
Because I'm angry all the time. So it increases your heart rate. It increases your blood pressure.
So what?
It can go from...
So what if it increased your heart rate? Who cares?
You tell me. You tell me, so what?
All right.
What's that doing?
Yeah.
So that's that chemical reaction, right? So it's inflaming and oxidizing the body
Probably.
through all of the stress chemicals.
So it's raising blood pressure, though.
So it's raising blood pressure. We can go from 120/80 to 220/130.
220 over 130 just for anger?
Yes.
That's getting my blood pressure up thinking about that.
There's some hypertension. Hypertension there.
So that's a good question. Is hypertension just chronically being angry about a situation, too?
yeah.
You know, oh, my damn boss. Oh, my family. Oh, my this. Oh, my that. The traffic. Blah, blah,
I'm
blah,
watching
anger.
politics every day.
Just shut that off. If you only spend your hormones in things you can change. So if politics make you angry, don't do it. Don't listen to it. You deserve to have lower blood pressure. All right.
That's right. So you're at much higher risk for stroke and heart attack.
Like a stroke of good luck?
A blood clot.
A blood clot.
Tell me why it increases clots. I didn't know it increased clotting.
Right. So one of the results of stress is increases blood sugar, which produces more advanced glycolation in products, which then causes more inflammation within the blood, and it can cause occlusions of it, but also it can cause clots to start to form through the inflammatory process.
Okay, so you really could develop a blood clot just from being angry.
Right. Angry clots.
Wow.
Yeah. Angry blood pressure, angry clots.
Yeah.
And the one thing about it, too, is if you think about it, you think about people, was it 40% of people have heart attacks during angry episodes?
Yeah.
And so your body says, look, if you can't pull your shit together, and if you can't let that shit go, then maybe you shouldn't be here. maybe you shouldn't participate in life.
Now,
right?
this is not a reason, we're not saying all of this as a reason for you to then get scared every time you get angry. That's not, and worry that you're going to give yourself a heart attack.
Acknowledge that you're fearful. Be okay with
right.
it. Don't judge
yeah,
it.
become aware. But really also this talk is about preventing that. So, you know, starting to do these practices even when you're not stressed out or angry. Tim, more ice cream should fix
you
that.
can't eat ice cream angrily. No angry ice cream eating.
You need to be mindful of your ice cream consumption.
Yes.
So impacts circulation. It constricts blood vessels.
Yeah. Genesis inner peace.
Yes. You only live once? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Unless you're a cat.
More harm to men than women. Anger.
Wait. More harm to who?
I just have this
men?
quote, more harm to men than women.
Because women are always making men angry.
It's their fault. I think this has to do with the fact that in general,
this is sexist.
this is just gender.
You're gonna be sexist.
This is social construction of gender, okay? It's socially constructed. It's not that they're born that way. What I'm saying is, I think it is more socially acceptable for men to express their emotions through anger.
Yeah. Well, because women are irrational when they're angry, and men are, what, responsive?
I think this talk has really started to go downhill.
I know. So...
Would you say women are irrational and men are responsive?
No, so if women act angry, they're considered irrational. But if men do it's what? Just
it's
strong
okay.
Opinionated or something?
Yeah.
As a certified man, I would like to say.
Also, I think too, in one of the classes, the American male class that I took at WSU, they said men don't have as many mechanisms for relief.
This is bullcrap. It's just you're a women's study major, and all they do is they say men dumb. They know not how to react.
That's not true. That's not true.
Their brains aren't designed to react to complicated situations like women.
Okay, first of all, I do want to say you're an outlier in this sense. I was going to talk about social connections. So, in general,
I agree.
there are outliers. Okay, we're just talking about the mean. We're just talking about the bell curve. All right. There are exceptions to the rule, and I think it's changing a lot.
It is.
But I think maybe men in the past typically have not had as many social supports.
Boom. I agree with that.
Thank you.
I agree. All right.
Giving me crap.
Keeping it real. All right.
And they don't.
You don't understand.
Go to the doctor
it is
as much.
hard in this country to be a white male. We are the most oppressed people, according to Fox News. There is no harder person it is to be a white male in this country. So, but I'm genetically black. I got my DNA back, so.
Hashtag sarcasm. So
I am black. Got my genetics.
So anger is a risk factor for heart disease.
Right.
It is a risk factor for more type A personalities.
Oh, internalizers.
And so we want to become people who have more healthy parasympathetic nervous systems.
Introverts more angry or extroverts?
I don't know.
Well, we'll never know from the introverts because their cats won't tell us.
That was a good one.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I've been working on that.
I'll allow that one for you. Okay, so let's get back to feeling
you have a couple
good.
more. Anger is...
Slows metabolism, tenses muscles.
It raises blood sugar for diabetes.
Raises blood sugar.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because people have the diabetes.
So when it arises, this is not a reason to have more anxiety about your health, but it is a reason to think more about anger and its effects. White man problems. So how does anger affect you and your life, and what does that look like? How are you able to then assess that take a look at it, slow down, not judge it, and take a look at what's causing that anger in terms of your own perceptions and identification with those perceptions. And there's 4,000 different ways you can meditate or exercise or whatever it is that helps you relax to kind of get back to that stable state. But mindfulness will help give you more control over your wild horse.
Stacy says we can jump, dunk, dance.
Yeah.
Someone's been drinking.
Those are all things as well.
So I really my like clothing thoughts on this is I like my idea of the horse and the rider.
Here we go. I like how white males always give the credit to females.
They do. There's all these things that we're now like figuring out. Well, actually, a woman invented DNA, or discovered. Actually, a woman wrote these codes for the Apollo mission. Actually, a woman did all this stuff. But all these men took credit for all that, and they couldn't say anything.
Yeah.
But I have daughters, so that's bullcrap. We're not doing that anymore, men.
Yeah, so anger lowers frequencies, gratitude raises frequencies. So we talk about energy and evolution and enlightenment, and it's a lighter experience. It's not as heavy. It's not as sticky.
Yeah.
And
if you can get to where you're rarely ever angry, life is so freaking joyful and peaceful. And it's the same exact life. It's just that wiring of how you perceive it.
I mean, I think that life is always going to challenge you in some way. And there are going to be unexpected challenges that come up. But that's what's interesting, and that's where the growth is. So when we see those things come up, and this is not something, you're not going to find enlightenment tomorrow. It's not about finding some permanent place of enlightenment. That doesn't exist.
Right, no.
It's just about riding those waves and helping to manage what you can manage and wiring your brain in positive ways versus negative ways. So controlling what you can control, which is yourself for the most part.
Only thing, unless your partner has a diaper, you can't change them.
What'd you say? Unless what?
Unless your partner has a diaper, you can't change them.
Wow. That's one I haven't heard before. In all the years we've done this?
Well, the real slogan is, if he doesn't have a diaper, you can't change him. But we're not sexist here, so we are saying others.
Yeah.
If everybody else isn't wearing a diaper, you can't change them.
So I would encourage you to look into your anger and find out what it's telling you. Develop new ways to communicate and express based on honoring yourself.
Yeah. And you deserve to not be angry. You don't have to be angry.
Yeah, it's harming us physically, and I think it's harming our world.
Yeah.
All around the world, and we know there's a better way.
Yeah.
All around the world, ay, ay, ay.
All right, you got that.
I can't find my anger.
All right, guys. So, any closing thoughts? You already had yours, kind of.
Yeah, I'm good. Do you guys have any thoughts or questions? I think we're gonna continue talking about emotions.
Is it Christmas? Because I'm about to wrap this up. Okay, fine. So, next week we're continuing with what filling?
I don't know. We've got some other choices.
We've got anxiety.
We've done anxiety and anger.
Should we do love?
Depression was one.
Love and then depression?
Yeah. We should do depression.
Depression then love?
I think we should do the happy ones at the end.
Okay. Why is depression unhappy? Why are you assigning depression a negativity?
Because that's what most people do.
Oh, we do what most people do now? And this is why my mom was mad all the time.
Thank you for sticking with us tonight.
Yeah. All right, post all your questions. Hey, I really want to hear what you guys have to say about, for those of you guys have found ways. Again, it's not about euphoria, perfection, any of that kind of stuff. But what are the little tips and tricks that you guys use that have allowed you to evolve a little or a lot to where you're less angry? And for some people, it's, the kids going off to college. For others, it's divorce. For some, it's getting a cat.
So I've been pairing my mindfulness with my exercise.
What?
Yeah. I put in did I say this last time?
You always talk about exercise every time.
That's because I found out my HDL is kind of low. The number one way to get your exercise, your HDL up, is to exercise.
Straight up, dog.
Straight up.
All right.
Anyway.
Love you guys.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Well, actually, in a week.